Hello again. I am a conservationist trained in the environmental sciences. This is a brand new species of mushroom unknown to science that I discovered, which was just sequenced and named this past month. It's the second new species I've found in my career. My boss, our superintendent, who has as much training as I do, as well as outdoor administration, subscribes to the magazine Acts and Facts, which have been sitting around our offices for many years. Reviewing this magazine fairly is a test of objectivity I think most people would fail, because all people care about is whether they agree with something or not, which predetermines our answers, making them thoughtless and inadmissible. Objectivity is not whether something is supported by data, but supported by open-mindedness and neutrality. The test of objectivity is, can you be fair to something you don't prefer? Let's say Westerns. You have to judge something within the context it's written for. If you can't, that's a very primitive mental obstacle. As I always say, the side a person is on doesn't predetermine who they are, which means objectivity isn't the exclusive property of science. Wisdom, debate, strategy are things independent of the physical sciences, which means you can make objective statements against science. Archaeologist Ed Barnhart said, "Floods happen." The ancient city-states of Mesopotamia were in the Euphrates River Valley. Why would you think natural disasters don't destroy ancient civilizations? The Trojan horse was a military strategy to infiltrate an opponent's stronghold. What reason did people have not to take this literally? Is it because building a giant horse seems ridiculous to them? So if I was to say the context of professional writing is not the same as it is for scientific data, data nodes have no finesse. They don't persuade anybody. And you were to say, but the reverse is true. If a publication gets something wrong and just flaunts it, where does the misinformation end? It would be like me saying a car runs on gasoline, and you saying, no, it runs on electricity. An objective third person is needed just to tell you you're not a domino that's predestined to keel over to one side or the other. The first thing that jumps out at me is the authors of Acts and Facts are very devoted and loyal. The second is they're very serious about emulating science, which at one time creationists did not do, presenting these extinct species to an audience who might very well be interested in biology. I'm an expert and I wouldn't be able to name all of these fossil fish if I saw them. Which raises my first question. There's more to being a Christian than just the flood. It's a part of biblical history, the purpose of which is the message and what we do with it. It would not faze me if there was no geological evidence or if there was more than one flood. The flood that I know was in the time of Noah, who lived a few generations before Abraham. He has a Sumerian name, Utnapishtim, and in the Sumerian version, he was a king who constructed a giant ship called Preserver of Life, which at the time of the inscriptions, people apparently could still visit on the mountainside where it came to rest, which means a flood that's supported by archaeological evidence. The inscriptions are among the oldest literature that exists. The alluvial plain in Mesopotamia forms a layer beneath those archaeological sites that marks the line in Sumerian history between the last antediluvian king and later kings, let's say around 3000 BC. Not 200 million years ago per se. So I was going to ask, if the authors are loyal to a certain religion, which you have to be if you're Episcopal, Lutheran, Anglican, which science are they loyal to? And the answer to that is the young Earth hypothesis. So as I understand it, their information comes from geologists and paleontologists who aren't disgruntled per se, but draw conclusions from their own research, which they have every right to do. So, is it okay to disagree? And I wish I could see those discussions. Does the editorial board have to deal with people who think they're too liberal towards science? And how do you know your information is right? But I'd like to revise that question. Religion is not exclusively a question of faith and science a question of data. That's a very black and white view of things. Religion is a pursuit of truth. You're not expected to go along with things that make no sense to you. And science is very faithful with a strong sense of loyalty, which is why there's enormous pressure to provide the right kind of results. So that's a critical question. Here's a more supportive question. In a presentation by presenter Chris Ashcraft called Geological Basis versus the Witness of Fossils, he says, unfortunately, most natural scientists hold to atheism. That's not a statement an objective scientist wants people to make. Science is a form of logic. Theism is a form of religion. You don't want people to know from your research which way you swing. It's supposed to just speak for itself, instead of scholars taking biblical subjects where they're having to bend around their disbelief so much it overwhelms the composition. An empirical scientist should want politics to have no place in science. That means no political minority and no political majority. I just saw on a job site, do you respect the minds of other people even if you disagree? So if a qualified geologist with his own research can be outside the box or even disloyal, that's not a disqualifying statement, which means there are also individuals who are intolerant, wanting to shoot down disloyalty by calling it bad data. So my conclusion is the fact that most natural scientists hold to atheism is the cause of this retaliation. Maybe they were retaliating themselves at one time. Natural Center for Science Education author Bill Thwaites, who considers himself their Acts and Facts checker, says, for purposes of convincing the scientific community that it is wrong about the age of the Earth and the existence of biological evolution, the ICR must appear as secular and scientific as possible. On the other hand, for purposes of garnering financial support, ICR must appear to be as religious and evangelical as the 700 Club. That is quite a scathing statement. If you saw something that defies explanation and someone calls it a hoax because they have no explanation for it, they're not in a position to question your honesty. If I'm against genetic nutrition on the grounds that genetics makes nutrition obsolete, saying hummingbirds live off sugar water and yet they have the same parts as an eagle, I'm still being honest even if I might be mistaken. But let's say someone actually was lying, not because you disagree with them. Reputable scientists don't stand for that, and reputable Christians don't stand for that. So let's put this to a litmus test. There are physicists, biologists, even chess theorists who go after people just because they can. If you're an interviewer or a judge, someone's choice of words can go against their qualifications, because how you present yourself is a qualification. So the question is, does something break the rules of science or of decency? Robert Shadewald, I hope I'm saying that right, in his article Scientific Creationism and Error, says creationism is unabashedly wedded to doctrine. Many prominent creationists apparently have the same view of truth as political radicals. Whatever advances the cause is true, whatever damages the cause is false. But scientists also believe that. They don't stand to be corrected unless the correction comes from within their own system. So if you look up Bill Thwaites to see where he's coming from, you come across a second article, and there's the answer. He was a participant in the 1977 creation debates at San Diego University, and this is the most comprehensive article I've ever seen on the history of those debates. Unfortunately, a smart, well-spoken role model can have so many facts, they can lead people to believe there is no debate. Imagine a court of law where just one side tells you what to believe for their own purposes. And that takes something away from us. I've never met them. I have no desire to swindle them. He says, I realized that if we were to beat the creationists at their own game, we would have to do just what they were asking us to do, to know their claims and check their validity as if creation science were a legitimate science. And should we find that some claim actually had merit, we would become famous overnight for being the first secular scientists to note the apparent legitimacy of a creationist claim. So, if you view the legal system or the court of popular opinion as an unscience, you might think having to prove yourself is a chore because the other side is unworthy. It's funny when someone looks down their nose at something you consider an achievement. A good strategy is only good when it works for you. I'm saving some facts for the archaeology versus pseudo-archaeology debate. Professor Miano claims that archaeologists don't hide or conceal controversial artifacts from the public, when I know of a case where one lab stole some remains from another lab. What do you think of the attitude that your opposition can't have even one fact, suggesting you would crumble because there can't be any facts if it's a hoax? So what if it just isn't a hoax? Here's an article called Bad Manners in the Emergency Department, Incivility Among Doctors. Unfortunately, people with the most expertise are sometimes the most bigoted. When you dig down, you find something really primitive and unpalatable. It's a rare quality not to have it. So, what is it that makes a specialist intolerant? The answer is when they don't show who they are outside the scientific method. The real argument for creationism is, are atheists playing games with their own eternity? Are they logical except when it matters because they don't care or don't know what happens to them? So, is it possible that people who are in the know are just not gifted in science and never will be? And are these two sides capable of discussing their differences in a common venue? Scientists are always talking about peer review. So what is our responsibility to provide a level playing field outside the confines of science? A field that answers only to reason. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.